Welcome to TWC Meets the Artist, a series of in conversations with local artists. I'm Danielle Ashak, CEO of the Women's Club. The Women's Club has been meeting on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation for 120 years, the traditional custodians of the land who've been meeting and sharing stories for thousands of years. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This evening, the Women's Club presents TWC Board Director Augusta Supple in conversation with Cloé Fournier. Cloé is a French-born Australian multidisciplinary artist currently based on Gadigal land. She works as a choreographer, director, dancer, physical performer, dramaturg, actor, and curator. She creates her own work under the umbrella Cloé F Projects, and we'll put the website in the chat later for you to view. Cloé has also performed in major international festivals in Australia, Asia, Europe, and North America. She's worked with acclaimed companies, Branch Nebula, Legs on the Wall, Stalker, Strings Attached, and Sydney Chamber Opera, the Living Room Theatre, and New Move, with many independent choreographers, including another fellow MTA guest who's also on the line today, Meryl Tankard. She has so many astounding credits to her name, all of which are listed on our website, and I'm sure Augusta will get that out tonight on a rundown in this conversation. So please join me in a virtual round of applause as I hand over to Augusta and Cloé.
Thanks so much, Danielle. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for hosting us this evening. And Cloé, it's so wonderful to see you. Welcome to TWC Meets the Artist, and thank you so much for sparing some of your time to be a part of this special series. It's really wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, I also must admit that I did send you a little text this morning and I said, oh, Cloé, do you have a show reel or something? And in true style of the artist, and this is directly in response to so many of our fantastic sort of audience members who have been tuning in, they've said, oh, can you share a little bit about the artist before you actually dive in? So in response to that audience feedback, we've got a little bit of a show reel that you've put together just today of your work. So I'll ask, thank you so much for doing that, Cloé. And Danielle, I'll see if you can share your screen and if we can hear that. Let's see. Incredible work, and round of applause, Chloe. Thank you so much for putting that together and also for sharing some of your highlights. I have to ask the question though, because I think when an artist puts together a show reel or they put together a PowerPoint presentation of their work, there are some things that it's quite a process, and especially for an artist who's been as busy as you've been for the time that I've known you, at least. The bits that you leave out and the bits that you put in. So can you tell us a little bit about your thinking about the elements that you wanted to show us today as far as your work in that video goes?
Well, for this video, what I did is that I really chose just the work that I've made under Cloé projects, instead of, you know, putting a lot of, I could have taken other footage from other people that I've worked with, but I thought I might just show more what I make. So there's also an insight into kind of my personality in terms of a maker as well, which is also where I'm going more and more now as I'm getting a bit older, I guess. I just always thought I would be a choreographer first when I left France, and not necessarily a performer. And I ended up performing a lot more than I thought I would. And I'm so grateful for that as well. But at first I really just wanted to make. That was my first love, I guess. And then in terms of editing, it's really hard. It's a bit like choreography. It's just, yeah, you have to make choices, and especially because I cut from, you know, other recordings that I had from different works. I just thought, because it's the women's club, I just wanted something that really showed the strength of women, and there's, you know, little inside jokes for me as well as I watch it again, and why I've put certain gays in as well, I guess. Yeah, and us living in a patriarchal society, I guess. That's what I wanted to show through that, but also the power of women. Yeah,
that's so lovely that you tailored that just for us this evening, Chloe. Thank you for your thought. I'm going to take you back to something that you just said then, which was where it really started for you, is that you wanted to be a maker. When lots of people think about dance or contemporary performance, the word choreographer comes to mind, but the use of the word maker is something that's quite expansive. So can you take us back, first of all, to maybe your first interaction with performance, maybe, or dance? Where did it all begin, I guess? And then talk us through a little bit about what it means to be a maker in your mind.
I was very young when I started dancing. I think I was 4, and that was really my decision. I can't remember it, but my mom always said, one day I went to her and I said, Mom, I just want to dance, so I want to go and do some dance classes. And she just took me to a community center that was near home. And I remember when I watched the footage where I was 5, I used to actually tell the others what to do on stage when they would have the wrong step. We would be performing and I would say, no, it's the wrong foot, it's the other one, right in the middle of the performance. It's really funny. It was a bit embarrassing as well. A bit bossy there in my young age, I guess. And then we moved to another suburbs where there was a conservatorium, which is a national school for in France, where you go to learn dance, and you go there for many years. My mom went to my teacher at the time, not at the conservatorium, and said I was going to audition for it. And she said, oh, I don't think it's for Chloe. I don't think she's got the level. She's not, you know, she's not good enough. And then I got in. So I was very happy. And my mom told me that just very recently that, you know, this teacher had no faith in me whatsoever. So, you know, always have faith and believe that you can do it, I guess, is the lesson. Yeah, and then I just went all the way through. And at the conservatorium, I was really into ballet at first. And then my ankles were actually too loose to do point work. So I had to divert and do more contemporary dance, which at first really obsessed me because I wanted to be a ballerina. And then I encountered a fantastic teacher. Her name was Brigitte Real, and not that you would know her, but I think it's important to acknowledge her. And she just opened my mind to not just dance, but theatricality and theatricality through movement, which I think, was a big eye-opener, and I just went, that's what I want to be doing. I think I'm quite expressive and theatrical myself. And if I had stayed in a form like ballet, I would have been very frustrated being told what to do all the time. I don't think I would have coped with that so much. So I coped with it for many years, but then at some point I just wanted to make. And then in contemporary dance, we were making a lot more. And then I arrived, well, that's jumping ahead a lot. Then I came to Australia, and I realized that in Australia, there is a lot less young makers. Well, at the time I arrived, which was 15 years ago. And so I just started to dance instead, to perform instead, or work for people as a dancer, I guess, and put my making on the side. It was also really hard because you have to apply for things a lot, and I was worried about my English and not being able to write, the applications and all this. So yeah, and then I met another fantastic woman here, Kay Armstrong, at the beginning of when I was here in Australia. I was also very theatrical, and I was able to express myself, and then that gave me confidence to start making my own thing here in Australia. One of the first solo, sorry,
no, go.
What? The first solo, actually, there's a little anecdote, because I know she's watching, she knows that. But I did an audition with ATYP, and it was actually Mary Tankard auditioning, and we had to make a little 2-minute solo, and I made a little 2-minute solo for the audition. And I went to the end, but I didn't get the part. But from that 2-minute solo, I then made Dining Unstable, which is a 4-hour work. And it was from that little task that I'd had in an audition that actually grew into a larger work. And that was my first work in Australia. Yeah, that's the anecdote about it.
It's a wonderful anecdote. And I think it is sort of like one of those things where you can be reminded that nothing is wasted, that all experience and that all opportunity can evolve and develop into other things. But I'm going to be a little bit boring and ask you to go back for us about that moment of the decision to move to Australia and to come here. What was the trigger for that, and what were you expecting when you arrived here? And was it for a short time or a long time or a good time? Why did you come here?
Well, like a lot of people, I think, I came for love. I met an Australian man in France, and then he had to come back to Australia, and I had finished my studies in France. So I just went, yeah, why not? I wanted to go to New York, and then, I was like, oh, Australia, why not? And I was just coming for 1 year. And after 1 year, I went back to France, but I was still with this man and was missing him. So I came back. And then, you apply for visa, this and that. And I think I fell in love with the country as well. I think there was something very special. I also think when you leave your country, and you stay for a long time in a foreign country, it's really hard to go back. I also met great people here, and I was offered some work. So I kind of started to have a network in Australia. And I think that's why I stayed as well. I was fearing going back home, I would lose all this and then maybe have no work at all. Also, Australia gave me a challenge to dance differently. In France, maybe it was very somatic or really, theatrical as well. And while there's people working this way, at the time when I arrived, it was very athletic. And I didn't necessarily have that. It was more like Gary Stewart's ADT style, I guess. And I was really not like this. Couldn't really jump very high. So I had to train myself in a different way. And I like a challenge. So I stayed also because of that, because it allowed me to be more versatile. So I still could have my French way of being, and then also again an Australian way of dancing, I guess. Yeah.
And then when you arrived here, a lot of people, I guess, have a sort of an experience of the Australian art scene, which can be kind of quite exclusive or brutal. It can be a little bit about who you know. And how did you sort of take your first step into this network that you've built?
I think I was very lucky when I arrived, because there was straight away, there was an audition at the time. Sydney Opera House had a program called Dance Tank. and they had a choreographer, Anton, and there was an audition. And so Anton is very athletic type of dancer and choreographer. So it was a bit of a risk. I had taken some of his classes and I really liked it, but I also knew that, you know, that was not my strong point maybe. But I auditioned and I got in. So I guess that allowed me to meet a lot of people. And in the show, there was a lot of different people who had been more packed. So, you know, very experimental. And then there were the really dancer. I had a friend from China, so she was really balletic, and then contemporary dancers as well. And I met other people from Dirty Feet, which is a collective that's been going on for many years now. And from meeting Anthea, from that show, I got to work with Dirty Feet. And, you know, then you continue and you meet other people along the way. I also met Imogen Krana, who is still one of my collaborators to this day. We're great friends, but we've been working together for 15 years now. And, you know, she's amazing. She's a musician, she's a dancer, she's also a visual artist, a media artist, sorry, and a mom. And yeah, so I also met, you know, amazing people that I still work with now, and shared a passion for dance, a passion for perhaps doing things a bit differently as well. I'm not really interested in the 5, 6, 7, 8 type of dancing. I like to provoke. I like when it's raw. If you watch the trailer, I like when it's a bit messy. I also really like the influence of music, feeling the rhythm in my body instead of having to count everything. I'm sorry, I diverged the question a little bit. But this being said, when I first arrived, I really felt that I was the foreigner for a very long time. I was a bit the French person who was going to take someone's spot somewhere. It was really hard to get in, but when you're in, you're kind of in. But it took, I'd say it took years in many ways, because even if I met some people, it took a very long time. And at some point I met Lee Wilson from Branch Nebula, which I guess I could say was my big break, if you can say that this way. Yeah, he believed in me. He actually didn't know my age at the time. And later during the process, he offered me to do a secondment on Concrete and Bones, and then I was put in the show. But at the time he didn't know my age, and when he landed, he was like, "Oh God, lucky you didn't tell me. I wouldn't maybe have taken you on otherwise." So he was too young compared to his other performers. Anyway, that was funny. Yeah.
And Concrete and Bones, that was one that was performed in a skate park, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was sort of like dancers, but also people on BMX bikes and skates. Yeah. Like skateboards. So it was kind of quite a very, shall I say, athletic.
Very athletic, yeah. But it was also something very different that I had. I just like these shows because it's a bit crazy, like a dancer on a bike with a BMX rider, and you have to avoid them. They jump over you. We've done another version of it next session, and we're about to do demo for I'm not sure it's been released, but anyway, for a festival in January. Yeah, so, and it's gonna, I just really like working for this company because they make this type of work that you don't get to experience all the time. It also takes a certain courage, I guess. It's a bit crazy. I like crazy things. I like to be challenged. I like to kind of work into a room and kind of go, "Oh, I can't do that, but I know I can actually," you know. Yeah, and just try and just giving the best of yourself to you know, in service of the show, I guess, or the idea that you're trying to portray or give to the audience. The adrenaline of it. I think I work a lot on adrenaline, so this type of show really works for me.
It's fascinating. I've seen you perform in some very unusual spaces and places, actually. So I guess when a lot of people think about, dance or performance, they might think of a proscenium arch stage, or they might think of something where they're sitting in the dark and they're watching a performer. The lights go down and then the lights come up on the performer and the performer performs. But that's not always, like, I don't think I've actually really seen you many times in that context. You work a lot in site-specific kind of work, and you've done a lot of work in Western Sydney, and you've done work all over the place. How does space or place really inform what you do? Like, what's the prerequisite for you to perform in a space, I guess?
Oh.
Or will you just perform anywhere? Like, if I said to you, Chloe, could you please perform, you know, in this toilet block somewhere, would you?
Yeah, I would probably do it. I think you can. Look, the beauty of the arts is that it shouldn't be just for artists or your peers to come and see you in a theater. Theater tickets cost a lot of money. I love dancing in theaters. You know, there's something about seeing the seats, and depending on where you're performing, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, for me, it's about sharing, and it's about sharing with the person who actually can't financially buy a ticket, but can see the show, because that might change. I'm not going to say I can change their lives, although I think it can, but it might change something in them. It might just make them happy for an hour, but it's just important. And sometimes, you have people around the street, they don't know there is a show, and suddenly, oh, we're here and there is a show and it's happening. In France, we have a lot of street shows. I remember performing on the streets. It was kind of like a weird Alice in Wonderland show that we did for a festival. And it was incredible because people who had never seen a show could see one. So yeah, I think site specific is amazing. I think there's also, it just brings new ideas. It really informs your practice or your making. When we performed in the skate park, I really had to work my body in that softness, not to injure myself, and I learned a lot about myself. I also work doing aerial with springs attached and with stalker mainly now. And you also have to train your body in a different way. So your body is always learning, I had to work on my center a lot, and then it reduces your hip flexors. For the next project, you have to do all the stretching. So it's the challenge of your body and modifying your body and adapting your body to serve the work, I guess. And I found that really beautiful, and I like the control of, like controlling my body in that way, and knowing that I'm able to also bring all this in my practice as a maker. I think all these people I've worked with are totally part of the performances that I make. You can't, it's like a DNA. They're part of you, and so. I've worked, when I first arrived, worked a lot with Dean Walsh, so there was a lot of things like this, opening through the shoulders, because that's how he moves. And I found myself sometimes doing this, but doing it my way, but I know where it comes from. Or, when I roll on the floor, throw myself on the floor, that small branch. When I hold my core very tight, that's more strings attached for stalker. So yeah, there is, or even the way of thinking from different people that I've been, I had a mentor, Vicky Van Hoot, as well, for Mea Culpa that I made, who also just, pushed me further than I probably would have gone without her. You know what I mean? Like, she said, yeah, just try this. And sometimes I would go, do you think it's too much? Because I also think Australia is so polite and so politically correct that sometimes I feel like I have to, put the brakes on, because how are they going to take that? And Vicky was like, oh, just go for it. So it's good. Yeah, I also think the beauty of me moving to Australia is that I make a type of work that I probably would have never made if I had stayed in France. I became really aware of my French background, or my Frenchness, I guess, because that's my way of I'm trying to find a way of belonging. I'm in between two cultures constantly now, because I've almost lived half of my life in both countries, almost. So there's a bit this identity crisis of like, I'm not really sure if I'm French or if I'm Australian, and what does that mean? So there's also now part of my practice that is going in that way, in terms of kind of like, am I always living in a translation of myself? Am I always in a way performing? Because this is not my language, this is not my culture, even though it's close to my culture. yeah, so all this has had an impact on how I make and how I research and how I try to sometimes translate some of my ideas that probably I see in a certain way because of my background, and then to put it on an Australian stage. How can it resonate with the people who are going to watch it? How can they, you know, identify? How can I touch them? For me, it's not so much about having a work that is good or bad. It's more about making some vibration inside someone's heart, you know. And maybe if they don't like it, it's okay. That means I've done something. I've touched them somehow. You know, if they're frustrated by it, that also means that I've touched them somehow too. And you can please everyone, thank God. Yeah. Also, again, sorry, I went out of the question.
No, not at all. And I think you should go out of the question. This is about, you know, and I really think that some of the things that you've said there, which is that sort of like the betweenness of being between culture or being between places, because I'm sure if you went back to France to live there now, I'm kind of curious to what you think maybe some of the Australianness might be that people would identify as Australian in your making.
Yeah, I have no, well, maybe this, you know, this strength. There's something about the Australians, like the body, the way you use your body is much more, I don't know how to explain it. I could just say this. There's something about the shoulders and it's more imposing. Maybe more sporty in a way, because especially in Sydney, I've always lived in Sydney. I just love Sydney. I think there's something about Sydney. I like it because it's a bit messy. To me, Melbourne is too organized. You know, the streets are very organized. You can't really get lost. Whereas in Sydney, you can get lost a little bit more easily. So I like that.
So I want to come back to this aesthetic that you have, where this is the second time you've brought up messiness as a part of your aesthetic. Can you sort of like expand a little bit more on the value of the messy for you, or what you like about it?
Life is messy. I don't think life, I mean, you can have a very regimented life, but then as soon as it's, you know, and I'm someone who's very organized, which is very funny. You know, at home, it needs to be super clean, no mess, no nothing. But I think sometimes in my mind, the ideas just go pew, 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 like this. And it's, I don't know, for me, a stage, I don't know why, but I just like a messy stage. It's so much more interesting. If it's too clean, it looks like nothing has happened. And I guess because it's already performance and you can't hang on to it, I need to kind of prove to myself, yes, we have danced on this. There's water, there's sweat, there's elastics, there is, you know, crap all over the stage. It has happened. And then you clean it. I think I really like the cleaning of the stage as well. And then it's over and we're ready to start again. Maybe it's a form of ritual. I don't know. But I like when I love props. For me, a stage without a prop, I don't know. I don't know. I've tried, you know, to make clean and aesthetically pleasing, but there's something about the unusual and the beauty of the unbeauty that I really like, because no one is perfect. And that's why I like that in dancers as well. Like sometimes I teach and they all want to dance, you know, like the way I teach, or they all want to have a perfection. But what's interesting is the individuality, I think, and that they're not all going to have, you know, their little finger the same way that I have mine, I guess. It's about individuals, a celebration of individuality within the group, I think, even though I've made many solo works more than ensemble works. But yeah, I think I work with characters as well. So, you know, there's a little bit of alter egos everywhere in my shows. Yeah, I don't know.
I feel so lucky that we've been able to talk to you. And I know that Danielle's appeared, which means that our time is up. But I have one last question for you, Cloé, which is there something that is coming up that we should look out for? I think you kind of maybe breached an embargo earlier about what you have. But don't worry, it's a couple of days away. I think there's,
okay.
Are there things that we can look out for that you're working on at the moment?
I'm working on the 2 works for myself, like one solo and potentially a trio or an ensemble work, but I don't know when it's going to happen because it takes a long time for me to make a work, I think. I'm also working with Meryl on another show with Form Dance Projects, and it's probably going to be performed sometimes next year, but I don't know when, and a few performances with Stalker Theatre. I don't have the dates now, sorry, because all the dates have been moved around, and the embargoed one in January in Parramatta. The name is Demo. That's what I can say. It will be fun. I think it's free as well, and if you have kids, it's great. They will enjoy it. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Cloé. Really appreciate it. You've been absolutely charming and wonderful. Thank you for all of your insights and sharing your work with us this evening. It's lovely to see you. I'm going to hand back to Danielle. Thanks.
Thanks so much for having me.
Concur, Cloé, thanks for joining us tonight on the Virtual Women's Club. You've made me feel a lot better about messiness. Like that philosophy, so I'm going to take that home with me. We look forward to also seeing you in the club in person.